Yo, what is good, NYU? We are back, episode 12 of the Silence Behind the Violence podcast. Kai is out today. He is seeing some family, well-deserved. A couple of days away from the office, stepping in for him in his place. I guess we could say friend of the pod.
Wow.
Friend of the pod.
What an honor. I mean, honestly, to come in here, having been a guest and now to assume co-hosting duties, first guest host.
Yeah,
right?
big
What
step.
Big step. Honestly, what a moment for me.
Wouldn't have rather anybody else. Who we are speaking with today, senior Aidan Massie, junior Zach Blatter. I'm sure if you are not living under a rock, you've seen their names pop up in many of our NYU Athletics Instagram captions. They are the two people behind all of the incredible work that we've put out this year. So, Andrew, there was one thing that you had brought up this morning that I think would serve as a good first talking point.
Yeah, so before we throw it to these guys, I want to kind of talk about how we kind of got them involved and how they kind of came on board, where we were when they came on board. So for regular listeners, obviously you heard Kyle and I talk about how we kind of got things off the ground with the brand last academic year, 2021-22, and we had a great group of students that I feel like we've shouted out a number of times: Luca Richmond, Skylar, Kelly, women's soccer, star player as well, all part of our graphics team, and that really kind of helped us define things. Kelly kind of decided to move on, work on the million other projects that she always works on, and Luca and Skylar both were going abroad in the fall. So over the summer, Kyle and I and Kai kind of looked around and we're like, so all that momentum we have going, like, where are we going to be? And we were like going to have to, bring in some new blood, and it was an exciting opportunity. And that's where these two guys came in. So, yeah, I guess kind of we'll throw it to you guys, talk about how you got yourselves involved over here, what your initial thoughts were when we first started talking to you about coming on board.
I'll let Aidan go ahead first.
Yeah.
Senior.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have always thought it would be cool to work for just the athletic department at whatever school I went to. So in high school, I was like, I'm from Ohio, go Bucks. So I was like, if I go to Ohio State, like that'd be so cool to work, with that, really prestigious, football department or whatever. But ended up coming to NYU and wanted to do stuff. Obviously, COVID happened and there were no sports for a year. But yeah, I actually remember junior year, I wanted to do graphic design for the athletic department, and not to throw shit, you guys never heard anything back. That's tough.
Predates me, baby.
That's tough.
I don't think that's true. Junior year, that was last year, Kyle.
That's true.
Don't throw me under the bus without you.
But I think honestly, that was like a really big shaping moment for me. Just to be like, they don't think I'm good enough, or I don't know, maybe you were busy, whatever. That's totally fine. Yeah. But I was like, I'm gonna come back next year and I'm gonna be so good that they, can't turn me away. Okay. And so I a little
bit of Laney High School. Hey, Michael.
Hey, man. And so I spent the year between just getting just doing stuff for fun, trying to get better at all the softwares and things like that, and trying to make high quality work just to get better, but just to do it for fun. And I came back and reached out to Kyle just because working in sports is what I want to do, and I figured that working for the NYU athletic department was something that would give me a lot of reps and doing a lot of different things for different sports. And yeah.
Before we go to Zach, I just want to say, when we first saw your email, we were looking through your portfolio, and this is still to this moment. Please tell the people what your professional Instagram handle is, because it's one of the best in the game.
My graphic design account on Instagram is aidanmassey.psd.
Yeah, and for the uninitiated, PSD is what Photoshop files are saved as. So me and Kyle see this and we're like, this kid's not playing around.
Yeah, he's got to shoe in, right?
So I guess for my story of how I got started and how I got into this room in the first place, I have been doing design, I guess, way longer than Aidan has. I probably downloaded my first copy of Photoshop in freshman or sophomore year of high school. And I wasn't making anything of quality at that time, but I still was just and I didn't really love doing it either. I would kind of just hang out, make a Knicks edit here and there, do something for my friends who played high school basketball or whatever, high school football even. But it was never like a hobby even to that point. It was kind of something I had on my computer and I was kind of decent at. And I ended up going through high school, and the senior year is when COVID happened, and I was like, wait a minute, let me pick this up a little bit more. And I had a little bit more time to play around and experiment with stuff. And a couple people were like, hey, you're pretty good at this. And I had a couple of things I put on Twitter that gained some traction, and I was like, all right, maybe I will put some more time into this. And I got to NYU, I had my freshman year, I had my sophomore year, and I was still doing it more than I had in high school, but not to the point where it was a consideration for a career path for me. But I ended up finishing my sophomore year, and I was like, all right, I kind of need to pick a direction of what I'm going to do here, because all I've done is take classes and sit in my dorm for the first 2 years of my NYU career. And I was like, I wonder if I could get involved with the athletics department, because I had some friends at other schools who did graphics or did social media, and they just emailed their athletics department and got involved. And I was like, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So I looked at the NYU Instagram, I looked at the NYU Hoops Instagram, and I'm looking at Luca Richmond's work, and I was like, damn, these kids are pretty good. And I was like, I think I can do stuff of this level or a level below or above or around here. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna ask my advisor how I can get involved, because she's the only person I had. I was like, she can advise me. And she was like, okay, I have a former student who actually used to work with them. And I was like, okay, great. And she gave me her email. Her name is escaping me now. Hannah Hokum. Hannah Hokum, yes.
Yeah.
Right, it was that. I forgot about that.
I had never met her. I still had never met her in person. But I emailed her, and I was like, hey, my advisor gave me your name, heard you work with athletics, just wondering if you can put me in the direction of somebody who I can talk to. And she was like, oh yeah, talk to Kyle and Andrew. So I was like, that's perfect. So I emailed both of you guys in a thread, and I was like, hey, my name is whatever, I do this, and I sent you a link to my Instagram, and I also sent you 6 things that I had done recently. It was some fresh work that I had on my desktop. And I think both of you were on vacation at the time.
July sounds about right.
Yeah, so I
Not
didn't
a
get
lot
a
of-
response for a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, pro tip about working in higher education, you've got about you get good amount of vacation time to use, but you get basically the amount of time you have off to use it. So everyone's away at the same time.
Yeah.
That's facts.
So I got the auto-generated response from Andrew, and it was yeah, he's out of office until this day. And I think I had just missed you. Your vacation had started July 2nd, and I must have emailed you on July 3rd.
And
so
Andrew's
you
better than
just
me.
left the office.
He's better than me of having a vacation responder. I just let that thing fly.
Yeah, I didn't even get a response from you. I got the Andrew one. I was like, okay, I'll bother Andrew instead. And then the email period goes by, and I have literally put a notification on my phone. It was Andrew's email thing opens up this day, and the first day you were back from vacation, I resent the email, and I still didn't get a response. So I was like, okay, he's just still on vacation. And I think another week passed, and I sent it for the 3rd time, and I finally got a response, and I was like, oh my goodness. Huge. But I don't think you gave me a substantial response. It was more we're going to look into it, and I'll talk to Kyle.
Yeah, honestly, at
That
that
was the
point,
response.
I don't remember exactly those steps. Obviously, it's going to be
it's a
much more
blur
intense
now.
for you. But I remember in general, we were trying to figure out how we were going to start hiring, kind of start replenishing, like I was saying. And I think we had gotten a number of inquiries. We knew we needed to post a job, see applications. We were already getting some inquiries from a number of people. And I feel like, Kyle, we were just okay, how are we going to start sifting through this? We don't want to start haphazardly responding to one person, not the other. Make sure that interview process, everything's fair. So I definitely remember that both of your emails were in the mix, and we're like, okay, I think these 2 guys look good. Their work looks good.
And within
But
the
let's
same
not
week, yeah.
we don't want to lose them, but we don't want to jump the gun and make sure we don't see all the candidates. But then we obviously eventually got into that conversation, but I'm glad we didn't miss out on you.
Yeah, I know. I have the email pulled up now. That's the only reason why I remember this stuff, or am able to pull this stuff back up. Yeah, July 27th is when you sent that.
Nice.
Yeah, really just talking about, you had just done a Jalen Brunson edit because
Jalen Brunson had
that
just
was
signed
new.
with the Knicks that week.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I was just about to bring up something that was mentioned at Baseball Media Day yesterday about hot takes, and one thing was about Jalen Brunson's skill level, but we're not about to go down this rabbit hole. We'll talk about it offline. Talk about it offline. I think you guys began to get a little bit into it, Aidan, probably you a little bit more so, but I do want to ask, so what got you into graphic design itself? Was there something that inspired you? Was there anything about it that, it really just drew you in?
Yeah, so I originally, first of all, growing up, my mom had a graphic design business. So I was never really interested in it, but I was always around it. She worked at home, and so whenever I'd get home from school, she'd be working on stuff, and I would just poke my head into her office, and she'd be designing logos and things like that. And So I was always around it, and I always like sit and watch her. So it was something I was always familiar with, but I was more into like photo and video stuff whenever I started college. And then I got into graphic design. I interned for the LA Sparks for not the most recent WNBA season, but the one before. And I started out as a web and digital content intern. So I was doing mostly like website management, things like that. And about a week into the internship, the graphic design intern quit. She got a full-time job at Under Armour, which respectfully I understand, you know.
Okay, Nike, but yeah.
You know,
Under Armour if you're hiring.
And so that position was like vacant, and I don't think that they were going to hire anyone. So my supervisor was like, "Hey, do you like want to do some of this graphic design stuff?" And that was really my first time realizing that there was graphic design in sports. It's like sports is something I've loved for forever. And so getting to try something new and doing it in sports was super awesome. And so I spent the season, you know, prepping all the like game day graphics and final score graphics and everything like that. Looking back at some of the stuff I made, it's like pretty garbage. There's some stuff where I'm like, all right, like, okay, Aidan, I see you. Like I had a little bit of, you know, flavor to it. But some of it is just not good. Yeah, and then I think, you know, ending that, I was interested in it, but I wasn't really continuing that once the internship was over. And then it was like probably about a year ago that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start making stuff. And like, it's going to be bad, and maybe I don't have to post it, maybe I will. And it'll just like, my Instagram will just be like a progression of, you know, how much better I've gotten. And so a year ago, I started making graphics for fun and started posting them, and that's how I started. So,
I didn't know that Aidan's mom was like a graphic designer.
I'm going to have to see some of her work.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Did not know that.
Curious.
That's super dope. How about you, Zach?
The way I got into this was a little bit more childish, I guess. But I played a ton of NBA 2K, My Team, and Madden Ultimate Team back in the day, and I was so like totally all of my friends were into the same stuff. So we used to sit at the lunch table and make like fake Madden Ultimate Team cards and fake like NBA 2K cards of like ourselves or like our friends or whatever. And I realized I could use Photoshop to do that. So I was using Photoshop to do that and a ton of other like meme stuff, like nothing that would ever be published or posted. It was just like stuff that we can share with our friends. And I ended up getting better. And then I kind of made that decision that Aidan made. He was like, yeah, I'm going to start making stuff and posting it now. And that was probably the end of my sophomore year of high school, maybe the beginning of my junior year of high school. And some of that stuff I was putting out was really bad, like really, really, really bad. It's all in the archives on my Instagram now. Like that's never going to see the light. That's never seen the light of day again. But, you know, you put more time into it. Eventually you get there. And then I think by the time I really sat down in COVID and really put in the hours and learned how to do stuff, that was when my stuff started getting some traction on Twitter, started getting some traction on Instagram. People were like, hey, you should like do this more. And that's when that happened. That was cool.
Yeah. How much has YouTube factored in for you guys at all?
I've never taken a single graphic design class in my life.
Yeah.
I don't plan on taking one in my actually maybe down the line for some smaller stuff. But I've learned every single thing I know on YouTube.
Yeah, I am also self-taught, and so like, yeah, YouTube. I used to use YouTube to get like a bunch of texture packs and things like that because people will be like, oh, like I made this. Here's how to use it, and then the link, like download link, is there. Yeah, I learned a lot from there, and I would watch them and be like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. Like, this is so complicated. But I think also part of it was just going to my mom, and my brother also knows a little bit of graphic design, and being like, hey, like, how do I do this? Like, I want to do this, but like, what tool do I use? Like, how do I get that to work in Photoshop or whatever? And so I guess having that resource to go to ask questions was nice.
Yeah. For you, super dope to be able to turn to them, but for both of you, YouTube University churned out some real crazy.
I didn't have anybody like in my life in person who had also done graphic design before, so I had to go to like my online friends that I had never met, or just random Instagram accounts that I'd followed and DM them and be like, "Yo, how did you do that text effect that you did, or how did you get this in the 100%. Corner?" Like sometimes they would DM me back, sometimes they wouldn't, and that was kind of it. That's how I learned everything.
It's funny how it's sometimes the simplest things. Like I remember when we were talking about the now very popular Spencer Friedman
Oh my
hymn
goodness.
graphic when we were
Something we thought was just going to be so easy to get
right,
out.
and
Yeah,
then
facts.
we're just going back and forth in Slack, and your first like run at it looked good, but then
was missing.
then I shot you like a little message like, hey, just so you know, if you go in Illustrator, you don't get those rounded edges when you put a stroke. And Zach's like, yo, this has been bothering me for years that when you do that in Photoshop, you get these bubbly edges. And it's funny because and I think I learned that literally just by like Googling, how do you get better like edges when you're like putting a stroke on something, and like literally a dumb sentence like that. And you could know
There's
the
also-
stuff you regularly do, you could be so on point, and then you just have to Google something that for someone else is the simplest thing in the world.
Something you think is the dumbest question you can ask, I promise you it's been asked before, and there's like
100%.
5 YouTube channels explaining how to do
Yeah.
it, which is probably the best thing and the most helpful thing about doing any of this.
I think also like there's stuff that I'm still learning that I genuinely like have no clue. Like there's some stuff in Photoshop that I've never used before. I think that's been one of the cool parts of getting to work with Zach for NYU is just we work on stuff and I'm like, yo, how did you do that? And
Yo, send me that PSD, bro,
yeah,
please.
we send PSDs back and forth just to like pull textures and see how layers are put together, which is super cool and something that I hadn't had before. So
Yeah, I mean, that's very much a lot of how I wanted things to go. And obviously, I would probably be speaking for Andrew, too, like for you guys to just work off each other. I think we saw it a little bit last year, but it was also a brand that, I mean, we didn't really have much of an identity for it. And it's funny, like I think about this all the time, particularly at media days, of which we just had one yesterday for baseball and softball.
Last one of the year.
Yeah, oh my God.
Can you believe
Thank
it?
God. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. But now, like, so many people will come and ask, like, yo, is this your first year doing this? Like, you guys are killing it X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yo, in many ways it is, like, at least my first year. Obviously you guys, this is just your first year coming through. But yeah, in many years, or rather in many ways, like actually having an identity and feeling secure in it, I think it's created for something that has been, the successful platform that is now our Instagram, which, we all very much contribute to together. So what I did want to ask next is about just how graphics have evolved over time, particularly relative to sport. I think there was one conversation that we were having like super on earlier. It might have even been during the interview process. I think we were talking with Zach and he was like, yeah, like I think that was cool, but it might be something that you more so see in like 2016. And I remember Andrew asking like, oh, like, out of curiosity, like, listen, we have no pride here. Like, what did you mean by that? And so like we wanted an example, but just overall, like for both of you guys, how have sports graphics evolved over time?
I can answer this one. I think when I first started, which was like 2016, 17, 18-ish, what people were doing, it was very maximalist and very like everything was how many effects can you put in here where I can still make out what player it is on the screen. And if you can like get to that little fine line, that's where you want it to be. And I would just kind of like deep fry every single picture in like contrast filters and all these crazy. I don't know if you ever heard of Topaz Labs filters, but that was like back in the day. It was like Camera Raw before Camera Raw.
Yeah.
So we were using that, and it kind of gave you this like shiny effect on like your whole image, and it was really really hard casted shadows and a lot of like different depth and layers to your stuff. Whereas I think now in post-COVID or just even like 2022 and 2023 in general, people are leaning towards brighter colors and more minimalist and flat stuff with like no shadows or just minimal shadows at all, where stuff is kind of just on one thing. You let the information, let the creativity shine through, and don't just dump a bunch of effects onto a platter.
I feel like I'm just like so new to sports design that I don't really have much to compare it to. I think whenever I was working for the Sparks, there was like, it was part of our brand, but we were using a ton of like paper tears and paper textures. And I think that was just like a generally popular thing around that time, like 1920. And that's not really as popular now. But I think, as you said, like very minimalist. And I think I see that in like both of our work too, is just, like one color use and like one image, very easy, light shadows, a little bit of text. And I think that that's like a very popular thing. I know that we talk a little bit just about sports teams that we look up to for their branding. And we were talking about the Lakers, talking about the Cavs, just with how minimal it is, but yet how like great, and how much
The
it
Lakers
tells
could
the story.
put out like their bottom end sponsor and some random graphic that was probably made by some intern. And I'm like, yo, this thing is groundbreaking. Like, look at this. Like,
Yeah, I think that's really been big for me because obviously, like, I trust you guys not only on the design part, and then obviously Andrew, you know, he'll knock out like the branding side of things and just checking those boxes off. But for me, it's like, okay, like, you know, it could look dope, but like, does it tell the story that we want to tell? If it's a statistical milestone, do we know the stat that is of, you know, importance and what we actually want to emphasize? Andrew, I'll also throw it to you, dude. Not even so much how have sport graphics evolved over time, but even just us, right? Because like we, you know, I titled that episode as like NYU Lifer when you were on, but even forget like, you know, going all the way back since you were a student, but like even just overall, like how you've seen our progression, even just within the new brand and, you know, what we've been able to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you guys talking about like stuff you did early on that's just absolute trash.
Yeah.
You can, and to be very clear, like I can hold my own for a person that isn't like doing this, like in terms of making a graphic, especially working with a concept someone else already has had. But if you look at some of the stuff before we, as a department, were taking this stuff seriously, bringing people in.
I looked before I sent you an email.
Okay, man. Anyway, you could find some stuff, and I mean, as you know, I've worn a lot of hats in this department, so sometimes I was just banging something out with the time I had. But there are some things that I made that I know I was like, oh, wow. I just hit that outer glow button so hard. Like, you know what I mean? And I look back now and like, it's like, oh wow, that's like embarrassing. But like you see, like both with your own personal progression and with, you know, the department's progression and also kind of what we're talking about, like even some things that I would say I'd quote unquote like embarrassed of, it's sort of sometimes just, hey, that's what things looked like in 2014. You know what I mean? And like people, not just like the tastes have sort of changed, but like the level that you need to be at a baseline just evolves and grows. And that's kind of what has happened with us. Like I think the biggest thing with us kind of learning our brand, like when you were saying, Kyle, like in some ways this is the first year, this is the first year that we know what we're working with. Like straight up, we went through the like a rebranding process. Like there was like a committee I was on. We talked about things. There was a company that submitted all the stuff. We saw different iterations. We got the final package of vector files, everything in June of 2021. And we were needing to make stuff in August of 2021. So like we had no idea of how we were going to use things. So like, I don't know, baseline, I'd say the biggest thing that's happened, and I think you guys lean into this in everything you make too, I think we've just grown to have the monogram be the center of everything. And when we started with this, the sort of chisel block NYU was certainly what was like anticipated to be at the center of everything, probably because it was the most similar to what we had before. But kind of at the beginning of our trying to sort this out, we kept like, I think, trying to like put a square peg in a round hole. And after a year or so of trying to make it work that way, I think we learned that. I think having you guys come in and have your own perspectives on like, okay, what am I going to use? What here is good and what can I pull and work? We've really come into our own with that over the course of this year. But that actually kind of makes me want to ask a question that I was thinking about while you were just talking, Kyle, too. I think this is actually a question we asked both of you when we interviewed you, but I'd be really curious to see how you feel about it now. Obviously, you came into this with your own skill sets, your own interests, your own personal styles. But one thing that was really important to me in terms of, you know, managing the brand, making a consistent identity was like, how are you going to work with an identity that's, you know, about something larger than your own sort of like design identity, your own personal taste. So how has that been? How do you think you've taken that on? And how do you feel about, you know, representing something and using like a package of tools that is kind of given to you?
I think it was kind of the perfect storm with you guys still figuring it out, because it wasn't like we got handed like a set of like law that we had to go by. And it was kind of like, I feel like me and Aidan for our first week or two or month even, we're kind of just experimenting and seeing what we liked. And then once we had kind of gotten like a little bit more of a theme going, we just stuck to that. But I do like how when we first came in here, it was like, hey, we got to know what you guys think looks good. And then me and Aidan kind of were on the same page naturally, which was nice.
Yeah, I think I say this in job interviews all the time, just because it's job interview season. But I think the best part about working for you guys is whenever we started, I remember distinctly Kyle was like, yeah, we like just whatever, but New York. And I think having that creative freedom to make whatever is super awesome, and it's been fun to work with. And then just trying to put a twist on of, like how can I put in New York but do it differently every time but still have the same kind of theme going. And I think having, like you look at some brands and like every graphic looks the same, which is fine. Like that's cool. That's what branding is. But I think that our ability to kind of tell the same story in a different way through different looks while, still just incorporating New York City is awesome. And I think also New York City offers so much stuff to be able to do that. Like the green construction walls, like that's like New York. Or the stickers that go on the street lamps or, subways, whatever. Like New York has so many unique things that a lot of brands can't use. And I think that's what makes it fun for me.
Yeah, I think anywhere I mean evergreen, but like any time that you're going into something for the second year, you're like way more comfortable. And heading into the second year, the reason I was scrolling for super long was I was trying to find this like LinkedIn post. This is my second time talking about LinkedIn on this podcast. Shout out LinkedIn.
Shout out.
Yeah, facts. And I remember this post specifically, right? Zach,
Yep.
you did that
One of my favorites.
And then Aidan, you did that one. This is super early on. This is 4 months ago, so this is October, I believe. So, yeah, it's one of my favorites too. What I had written in this post was elevate and innovate during our interview process for student employees. It was super important for us at NYU Athletics to see how members of this creative services team would be able to elevate and innovate graphics for a stronger digital presence. That was like a really big thing for me heading into year 2. Of course, our priority is to disseminate information, as I mentioned before, right? Like tell the story. But the X factor for us is that we're located in the greatest city in the world. And that's something that I really wanted to emphasize this year. And you guys have taken that and ran with it, right? So I think that you guys, not only being as NYU students, but also being upperclassmen NYU students, that you've been in the city for a few years, you're not like grasping at, Midtown, at the Empire State, like every school does that, whether it's a CUNY, whether it's another private school in New York City. Maybe it does fit them, but like that's not as us. Like I love stuff when it does have cast iron, when it does have the
Spring Street sign that we had.
Spring Street, cobblestone. Even when it what is it, the print on the ground of the library.
Oh, the
Like
boat
stuff like
texture.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I thought that was really cool. So I mean, we can even speak to like just the ideas and concepts thread that we have, like that little channel, on Slack where we can just throw shit in there. Right? Don't matter. Like we'll come back to it later, but like at least there's a place to come back to it. That is a little bit on the graphic design part, and we're most definitely going to come back to it. I mean, that is the big common thread here. But I do want to ask, as we mentioned, as you upperclassmen at NYU, the university side of things as well. Obviously, this work-study job that you have, it's a large component of what you do at NYU. But what drew you here to begin with?
I can answer this one first, I guess. I grew up like 40 minutes away from campus in Westchester County, and my like number one goal, like when I started this college application process in like the end of my sophomore year, beginning of junior year, I was like, all right, I want to be as close to the city as possible. If I can be in the city, that'd be great, but I'm okay going to like Philly or Boston or somewhere that's not too far, you know what I mean? Because I knew I wasn't getting into Columbia, and it was either like NYU or like, I don't want to go. I was like, okay, so it's going to be NYU. That's going to be my number one choice. And then I had Emerson College was another place I really liked in Boston. And I had Drexel was like my third option. I really like did my research and narrowed this college search process down where I had some friends who like applied to 15, 20 schools. And I was like, no, I know exactly. I got one school that's like the reach, one school that's like the target, and then one school that's like the, what do they call it? Like the safety, yeah. And I got really lucky that I got waitlisted at NYU, and then I committed to Emerson, and then in like June, NYU sends me an email, and they're like, oh, there's actually a room for the waitlist kids.
Me too.
And I was like, let's go. Yeah, so I got off the waitlist, and that was cool. But I wanted to be as close to New York just because I grew up here, and also like the Knicks are my life, and I like needed to be somewhere where I can watch the Knicks on local TV. And I was like, yeah, that's great. We're here.
No blackout restrictions.
For me, as I mentioned, grew up in Ohio. My hometown is about 7,000 people.
Mine was 9,000, so I grew up in a small town too. So.
Literally, like that many people live like in my block. Like it's crazy, just the transition there. But I think I applied to a bunch of big name schools, got rejected to a lot of them. I was definitely I was a reach. And I got waitlisted at NYU. I applied early decision just because I thought it would better my chances.
So
of
did
getting
I. Yeah.
in.
I was like, you know what? I probably won't get in, so I'll just ED anyway. That's what I said.
Yeah. And so I ED'd, got waitlisted. Eventually, it came down to Ohio State and Ohio University. I committed to Ohio State, and again, like Zach said, in like the later part of June, about a week before graduation, they accepted me off the wait list, and they said, you have 72 hours to decide.
Yeah, they said we have 72 hours to decide.
So wild.
Yeah.
Not know that.
So wild. And it was really, I was picking between Ohio State and NYU. And I told myself that I wanted to live in a major city at some point in my life. And the opportunity presented itself to do that while I was still not completely independent and working a job for the rest of my life. And so I said, why not do it now? So
Wait, I'm sorry, isn't it the Ohio State
it
University?
is. It is.
Allegedly.
Trademarks, yeah. The Ohio State University.
Yeah.
There was a caveat in my email that I forgot to mention. They told me that they were like, hey, we actually have a spot for you in a specialized program where you're going to start in Paris, and then you're going to come back to New York in the summer to make up the fall semester. So they wanted me to miss the fall semester, come to Paris in the spring, and then make up what I missed in the fall in the following summer.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, so I have 72 hours to decide if I want to go to Emerson or do I want to go to France at NYU? And I was like, oh, I'll definitely go to France at NYU. I was like, never studied a lick of French. I took Spanish my entire time in growing up. But I was like, yeah, I guess I can't pass this down.
Right.
And then like 3 months later, they're like, oh, actually, there's a global pandemic and you can't go to Paris.
Damn,
So
yeah.
then I came to New York anyway. So I applied to be in New York and I ended up in New York, which was great. So
Yeah, it's a skinny 3 days that you guys have to decide.
I made the decision in like 8 hours. I didn't need the whole, I didn't need the whole 72.
I mean, that also like very
Yeah.
much fits you.
I sent a few texts. I was like, I'm not crazy, right? And they're like, no, you're not crazy. So I
Bro,
just,
I took about 72 hours to decide.
And that fits you.
Like 71-53.
100%.
Exactly. Well, I mean, obviously, for you, Andrew, I mean, did you always like know you were gonna go to NYU? Like, obviously, you have the tie, but did you know you were gonna go?
I could make it complicated, but yeah, I mean, I know I needed to get in, but the first time I took the SAT my junior year, not to brag, but I did more than well enough that like I knew, especially if I did early decision.
I didn't. I was like, oh, my SAT is terrible, man. They're going
Yeah.
to laugh at this when I sent that in.
But you know what? Everyone has different paths. This is a whole other thing. I had like my sort of like academic mental health struggles while I was here, but like, you know, I guess just in terms of like school and like SAT stuff, I knew by whatever May of my junior year, I was in good enough position to get in here, especially if I did early decision. And my father was a basketball coach here. I was so comfortable with NYU. I'd always wanted to. Then I went to high school. I don't know if we talked about this when it was my episode, but I went to high school. I'm from Staten Island, but I went to high school in Manhattan at Xavier on 16th Street. So right around the same area of NYU. And I was like, yeah, this is for me. So it was very, it was kind of like, as soon as I knew I was going to get in, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm coming here.
Yeah. And then for Zach and Aidan, well, actually, no. Let me, before I go on to the next one, you guys used the term like committed. And I was like, yo, could you imagine we had like commitment graphics for student workers? Like incoming students.
When someone gets me their Wasserman form, I'm going to just send it over to you to make it for your coworkers.
Post it on Instagram, guys.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so actually for this next one, though, you're welcome to New York City moment. I don't know the extent to which you guys have listened to this podcast prior, but, you know, typically that for somebody that has never lived in New York City before, you know, there's bound to be something that was like, whoa, okay, yeah, I'm actually here.
Aiden and I discussed this question before we hit record, and I want Aiden to give his answer first.
I don't want to have to follow up, Zach. Mine is feels like it's pretty, you know, normal. Like everyone goes through it. I would say honestly, just the subway. There's zero public transportation where I'm from, and so I think I remember one day specifically. So my major is in Brooklyn, and I lived in Manhattan freshman year, so I had to commute. And I remember I had to go to an open house in Brooklyn. Had no idea how to get there, and I went over to West Fourth, the subway, with 2 friends that were in my major, and we were trying to go down there together. And it feels so, like, I think about it now, I'm like, that's so dumb. Like, I can't believe I made that mistake because the signs were right there. Uptown, downtown, whatever. And I remember I just got on the wrong AC train, went up to Midtown, and had to get off. It took me several stops to realize, oh, I'm not going the right direction. And then I had to get off, go back down into Brooklyn. I mean, I think it's pretty boring, but that was just the way of getting around it. I mean, I talked to people at home. They're like, "Oh, is navigating the subway really challenging?" I'm like, "Well, no, it's not anymore. Like, it makes total sense now." But back then, it was super confusing.
It seems intimidating to start, and I can admit that it is.
I'll also give you West Fourth. Like, where you go in,
It's
they're
confusing.
like ushering you to one side, and if
100%.
you go where one side is, and you're just like, there's a flow of people, you're just going with the flow. It's such a big platform. You're like, this has to be all the trains.
Look at all these people, man. Everybody's going.
Everything's
We're all in
there.
the same place.
All right, my story is a little bit more dramatic, I guess. But during that, so I did accept the NYU offer, the Paris thing, and I actually
committed.
I committed, yeah. I still like had the gap semester in the fall, like that part of the deal was still intact, and I came to New York in the spring instead of Paris. I finished that semester. I'm doing the summer semester, and this is summer 2021. So I don't know if you remember, like this is when the vaccines are like just getting out, and we're like kind of just getting outside, but not really. So like the city hadn't really come back yet. Like I was living in University Hall in the summer, which is like you're living in like an empty building pretty much. Like there was me and one other kid on my entire floor. So that I mean it was nice, but it was also like very weird. I was living in like a sterile environment. But anyway, I had like I don't know if they were taking a summer class at NYU, but some of the work is just like they stack it up, man, those summer classes. And I had to just grind out like a presentation. And I finished it around like 4:30 in the morning. And like that was like the first time I had ever like really pulled the all-nighter and like grinded an assignment like a typical college kid would do. And I finished the assignment around 4:30 and the sun was coming up. And I was like, you know, I have never experienced the sunrise in New York. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have this chance again. So I might as well just go for a
Never
walk.
again.
I was like, I might
never see a sunrise.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I'm not going to be awake at this time for any time in the near future. Like, 'cause I'm not going to have a reason to be awake at this time. So I was like, you know, I'm going to go for a walk. I had been sitting at my desk for so long anyway. I needed like a breath of fresh air. So, and this is like July. I walked out with shorts and a t-shirt, like my skinny little kid, 4:30, 4:45, walks out. And, you know, I made the left outside of University Hall to go down to 14th and 4th. And by that bus stop where the little candy shop is where the Walgreens used to be, there was like 4 guys hanging out on bikes. And I looked at them. We made eye contact. And it was 4:30 in COVID. Like, it was just me out there and them. Like, the streets were just, like, dead and empty at this time. We walked past. I looked at them. They looked at me. And I kept walking. I'm such a terrible person, but I walk with my phone out like all the time. And it's like, it's gonna get me in trouble next. But I'm walking with my phone and I made it like 2 blocks past them. I think I made a left on 4th Ave and went down. So I'm probably on like 4th Ave and 12th Street, 11th Street. And I start hearing some stuff. So I look up from my phone and I see a guy on a bike coming towards me. And I'm like, oh, shit. And he's biking on the sidewalk. He's not like in the street. So I was like, okay, this guy's like, why are you biking on the sidewalk towards me? So I turn around and there's another guy biking at me from the opposite direction. And I'm like, oh, geez, this is not good. And then a third one comes out from this other alleyway. And I'm like, oh, my God, I'm getting circled by these bikers. They're going to rob me. And they start yelling some stuff. They're wearing like the ski masks, and they start yelling some stuff at me. And I had no idea. Like they couldn't even. It might not have been English. Like what they were yelling at me. But I know what you got to do in those situations. You got to just scream as loud as you can, and you gotta run in the middle of the street where the cars can see you. That's like what my parents told me. That's what everybody in the city has told me to do. So I did just that.
So you're in front of Flight Club at this point, yeah.
I'm a little bit north of Flight Club. I'm probably closer to like the 3 times, like the Chinese spot over there. And I walked to I was on like 10th or 11th Street. I walked to the main avenue to 4th, or I ran to like the main avenue, and I started just screaming. I was like, these guys are chasing me. These guys are chasing me. And I bang on this apartment building door where there's like a doorman who's sitting in there like on his phone. And I'm like, yo, these guys are chasing me. And I just kept running and running. And I eventually escaped them. Like I made enough of a scene where they didn't want to keep chasing me. So I won in the end. It was a safe story. But that was my like, don't walk on your phone at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
In COVID.
Well, it's a safe story because they were all wearing masks.
They were all wearing masks. Yes.
That's funny, man. Damn, we'll talk about dramatization.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
I'm glad I went first.
Yeah. Well, now every time I walk down there, like around Concepts and that area.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
right
be
over
like,
there, dude. Like right where you think it's safe, like the place you've walked hundreds and hundreds of times. I'm like, oh wait a minute, this is.
Well, that was I remember that summer though. That was the summer before I joined here. That
quiet
was a hell of
summer.
a summer.
Quiet summer out
Yeah,
here.
yeah. It was. I mean, it was. Well, I remember I got like the soft launch of the Vax because
Me too. I got the exclusive release,
I'm
like the
plugged in,
city
right? I had
employee
the early
thing.
access.
Yeah, I got that.
I had the sneakers early access,
Yeah.
and I checked out quick, and it was definitely different, New York then versus now. But anyways, on a weekly like basis though, just speaking more along like our workflow, do you want to just give the people a peek behind the curtain as for our like weekly workflow? Because everyone thinks that these things just like come out of thin air, but like there's a reason why.
We always joke the make a graphic button.
Yeah,
Whenever
yeah.
someone's like, "Oh, we need to put something up," it's like, "Oh, of course, I'll just press the
Just
make a graphic button."
Yeah, exactly. People dead ass think it's that easy, but like, yeah, again, like just the weekly workflow as it relates to like prep and timeliness, idea generations. Just because like there's a reason, there's a way in which when the final buzzer like the final horn sounds, like it's already uploaded, right? Like for me, in a real ideal world, for at least sports that you can like truly track the live statistics and stuff like that, because some sports like you can't, right? Or at least we're not there yet. Like before they even walk off the court or get back into the locker room, by the time they check their phone, like I want that shit waiting there for them. And obviously you guys have done a great job of that. But if either of you want to just give, or both of you give again, just some insight on our weekly workflow.
So we have our meetings, whether it was Tuesday first semester and now it's Monday mornings. And we go through like what's ahead in the athletics calendar. Luckily, like most of our events are on Fridays and Saturdays, where it's not like we have stuff that needs to be done for Wednesday night. I mean, it does happen, but most of the time it's towards the end of the week. And Kyle will be like, "Yo, Aidan, this one's better suited for you. Zach, this one's better suited for you," or whatever what you're feeling. And we try to if like for basketball, and it's like I guess will be the first example. Like they always have their road games on the weekends and stuff. And we're always going to prepare a graphic in case they win. And we've been doing like the city name on the bottom and all that stuff. They don't always win, which is like okay. But because I can recycle the prints and stuff. So it doesn't hurt that much. But we will just make those in advance in case they win. And then if they win, Kyle will have them up as soon as that final buzzer sounds. And if they don't win, I can recycle the PSD. And it's all good. So.
Yeah, and I think also what you were saying about our meeting, just the way that you like divvy up stuff to our strengths is nice. But I think you also do a good job of like giving us stuff that we maybe aren't so good at that we can improve at, which I appreciate. But yeah, as you said, the meeting at the beginning of the week, every week, and then I think the week that we just had maybe 2 weeks ago. The huge weekend that we had, that's a good example.
Wild week, bro.
But we were prepping graphics. We had 2 Friday, Sunday home games, men's and women's basketball. And then we had a swim, the UAA swim championship and the wrestling championship.
Correct.
Same weekend. So Zach and I were logging a lot of hours that week. But made a graphic, like a template, if you will, for any UAA champion that won in swim, and then so I had that template ready, and then at the conclusion of each day, just prepping those graphics and finalizing them with whoever won and what their times were and things like that, and it was ready to be put out the following morning. And then, as you said, the basketball graphics when they went on the road, those ones are super fun just to work with different kinds of cities and stuff, and I think that follows our theme too of incorporating New York City, which is fun. But we have those ready probably by Wednesday or Thursday.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. And also just the milestones are kind of fun.
Shout out to Kai for tracking every milestone ever.
For sure. Some of them slip through the cracks. Not to throw shade at Kai, but just it happens. and then there's some that like Natalie Bruns had 10 blocks in a game a few weeks ago, and I'm like, you can't anticipate that ever happening.
What do you mean you can't anticipate a triple
Yeah.
double with blocks?
Insane.
Although Natalie Bruns, you probably should.
Yeah.
She's been a beast.
But that one, literally, I remember I was at the game, and I made the graphic in between the games just from scratch. Like, we didn't have anything prepared for that. So it's a pretty quick environment, especially in those circumstances. But
Yeah, we also, I think, Andrew and I try to be super mindful of you guys' workload. I think many other administrators are just like, you're a student worker and you got to stop everything you're doing for this, right? But like even just like on the communication front, hey, like it's midterms, I got a lot going on. All right, cool. Like that's fine. We're still going to operate at a high level. We're just going to be mindful of when and how much we ask of you guys. Same thing of like, Zach, how you mentioned for spring break that you're going away. Like we'll obviously take advantage of the time that we have leading up to that to prep some templates. But again, I mean, credit to you guys, just communication in terms of just like, hey, like, I have a lot going on, or I can take more on the flip side of that. Aidan, you had something over the weekend where you on this super cool production set, and so you turned something over to Zach. And I was like, okay, word, I don't even need to be looped in.
Yeah.
Like he just told me that was happening. He sent it to me. All good, right? So I'm happy with how we built it out. I hope that this can continue to be a model for, for the years to come. The next question I wanted to ask was really just through your work thus far. I know for me personally, like I get at each institution that I've been at, whether it's synchronized swimming at Wheaton College or field hockey at UMass Dartmouth or, here fencing, right? There's always been a program or two or three that I learned like way more about through this work. For each of you guys, what, through your work thus far, what program have you learned way more about?
I have an answer ready to go if you have taken it. Mine would definitely be volleyball, men's and women's volleyball. And I think the number one reason for this is like I can point it to one experience. It was when, like, I remember during my interview, they were like, you guys were telling me, they're like, hey, we'll have you do graphic design stuff, but there's a chance like we might need an extra body to fill in on like game day operations or some other task that we have going on. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'll do whatever. And that chance did happen. And I think it was in like November, December for the UAA. Was it UAA championships? I think it was. It was women's volleyball UAA championships. And Kai is like, yo, I need you to come and just help me with the stats. And I was like, I don't really know what that means, but like, I'll come help with the stats. And I sit down there, and it was like the first time I got in like my staff like quarters. If I was like, oh damn, I'm here, like finally. And Kai's telling me, he's like, all you're gonna do is just every time one of these people touches the ball, just yell out their number. That's it. And I was like, okay. So I think the first set happens, and I'm just calling out these numbers, and I'm like, all right, am I doing good, Kai? He's like, you're perfect. He's like, you're doing great, doing great. And I was like, okay, great. And the first like beginning of the matches, I wasn't really sure what was going on. I've only volleyball experience I had was like recess volleyball in like high school. Like I had never been to a competitive volleyball environment in my life. And I didn't even know the rules. I didn't know that there was like 5 sets played in the winner of the 5. I didn't know anything. And we actually it was one of the most entertaining volleyball matches that Kai had ever seen. He said, and he was like, "Yo, this is like a war. Like we're going crazy. Like they're like the fifth set. It's like 21-20, and like this is like for it all." And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I'm calling out these numbers, and it was crazy. And I was like, "This is some real stuff."
Yeah, volleyball is just so sick to watch.
Yeah,
so sick.
Also, volleyball like. D3 volleyball is played at a really high level. I was like,
yeah.
I was so impressed. Like athletically,
Right.
I was beyond impressed. I was like, wow, this is definitely not what I expected this to be at all, and I had a great time.
I think it was our very, very first guest that we had, Spaith. I think she was our first guest, where she was like, yo, like, come out to a game. Like, I promise you will not be disappointed. Yeah. And Buddy Cohen said the same exact thing. And, bro, like, without fail, so cool. Even if you know nothing about it, just off the energy, off the atmosphere that comes from the court itself. I went in with nothing. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is like
that's fun. Awesome. What you got, Aidan?
I think like I generally have a good idea of how all the sports work, and I think like learning more about a sport there hasn't been a lot of. I think the big thing for me is just how invested I've become in all of the athletics. Yeah. Like I remember working for the athletic department my freshman year, doing something completely different, but I just like went to games and I was like, yeah, like it's cool, I mean, whatever. And I've always been a huge football fan, so I'm like, football ride or die, like that's what I'm paying my attention to. But now it's like getting to make these graphics and following the stats and all the final scores and standings. Like it's just really cool to know the people that play, like know who they are, and like I remember women's volleyball was playing in a tournament, and I was like. I was in both studying, but I was watching the game just because I was invested and I wanted to watch it. And also, like, I am in a class, and women's basketball coach Barber was a guest in there, and and I jumped the gun because I thought that there were 3 games left in the season, and I thought they could clinch with a certain game, but there were 5 games left, so I messed up my question. But just the fact that I know like the clinching and like when it can happen, and just that I'm so invested in it, like that's been really fun. And it's essentially the same as like like even though it's D3 and there's the stigma that D3 isn't as great as D1 or pro or anything like that, like it's all the same, and all these athletes are playing it, like you said, at a really high level, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks so much to the community part that we've been so badly wanting to build out. I think that when I very first started, there was a lot of talk among senior administration about, like, lack of identity or community, or rather lack of community because we weren't so sure about our identity. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like, new marks, right? And, like, really incorporating those, stuff like that. Now I think we've really found a comfort zone, even down to the new uniforms, the graphics and stuff. Like digital, we were able to get that going a little bit last year, but now that we have some physical stuff to go with it, it's been pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, very much to the community part, like the school spirit portion to it. And then Andrew, this is a direct tie to something that you mentioned about just having a home again, and in this building that we're in right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that community and like that community around athletics is something. When I was a student here, that was like the whole thing. Like the students that worked in the department, that level of investment you're talking about, like it's something that the teams like draw on and draw from. Like that, the people that are around them that they see every day are kind of the basis of who's supporting them, is something that, I mean, when I was here, all my friends, people I was with, it's something I know the student athletes can feel, and it makes it just a better environment for everyone. It makes the work that you all do better too if you care. So I think it's just everyone elevating each other in the end.
Yeah, I was also going to say, I think, like you mentioned, like people come to a game and they're, it's entertaining, but I think even more so whenever it comes here to this building, it's going to be so easy for people to come, and, people are going to be invested in it, which is awesome. I think also another answer, volleyball, like I know what all the statistics are and stuff, but I didn't realize like what a good number is. But this season, like Lindsay Hirano broke the record for digs in the season. Had no idea like what's a good number for digs. Have no idea, but she had like 900 something, like 150 more than anyone ever in a season. Like, okay, I don't know much about numbers, but I know Lindsay's pretty good.
Yeah, you actually develop a grasp for it, right? Like, when you see the margin be that big, and then even to that same point, it's like when you guys are not only caring, you're invested, whether you have a class with that person or you just love the sport and the level to which they compete, you then begin to be, like Andrew's point about just elevating your work, so much more proactive in whatever it is. So it's just like, hey, like I saw this on the schedule coming up. You think we should prep for it? Yeah. Same thing with the statistical thing. Aidan and I were just shooting messages back and forth the other day about women's basketball, clinching at least a share of the UAA title. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but like, I won't win that thing, right? So, we'll wait until Friday. But yeah, I mean, it's that type of stuff that again, it only elevates us as a whole and as a unit. And, it shows in the community for sure.
I also think the fact that we create content that's so shareable between players and fans is huge. Yeah. And like when like these players are kind of becoming celebrities in themselves, like micro celebrities in themselves around campus. And when they get to repost graphics, it's just like more and more eyes get to see our stuff, and the more and more people know that we exist and know that we have sports teams and all that stuff. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, it's down to the pride of the person that's actually accomplishing it, but then the whole program, and then the recruiting, and then the university, in whatever order you want to put that in. These are like really big, like, wavelengths that are, or, sound waves that are getting louder and louder, I guess you could say. I wanted to next ask, what's your favorite graphic that you each have done this academic year?
I think for me, men's basketball Gotham Gray uniform reveal was super cool. Sick. I think also men's volleyball uniform reveal I enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think collection-wise, women's volleyball is super fun. As I said, they broke a ton of records, so getting to do all those milestone graphics were really cool. And then National Girls and Women's in Sports Day was super fun. Just to, like, there's not many graphics that get to pull in athletes from every sport that we have, so getting to do that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think my personal favorite was hands down the preseason women's basketball slam cover that we did, which we got to, like, I got to experience that from the jump, from the ideation day to the photo shoot day where we were like right in the room, like trying to get the good shot. And then that night is when I went home and we had the shots turned around like a couple hours later, and I made it like that night and finished up in the morning.
Yeah, we were just trying to get
that one just
wording
I thought that came out so sick. So, and I never really got a chance to make anything like that before in my life, and I thought I handled it pretty well, so that was fun.
Right. one of the next things I had on here was just about like how this experience has like led to any relationship or community of any sort. Obviously, we spoke on that a great deal, but before we go to the next one, I will just see if there's any other closing thoughts that you had on that.
It is pretty cool when you like. Sometimes I'll sit down in classes and I see kids with like the monogram backpack, and I'm like, oh, these kids, maybe he plays a sport. So I ask the kid, I'm like, oh, what sport do you play? And they tell me whatever X sport it is. I'm like, oh, I actually made those graphics for you guys. They're like, that was you? That was you? And I'm like, yeah. So I've had like 4 of those interactions already. So those are fun.
It's so funny. I love telling people I walk around campus and I see people that I've put into graphics.
It's
before.
so annoying.
Like,
I'm like, yeah, I've looked at every picture in your Google Drive folder, and like I don't know, like you don't know each other.
I know exactly who you are. You have no idea who I am. But I think I remember Kelly, OG from last year, reached out and just like had a question about how I made something, which is cool. And then Kawika from the men's basketball team is working on a project, and he asked me, just for like design input, which is super cool. That's cool. Just to like have that connection, but also like people are recognizing, the stuff that Zach and I are doing and think that it's good and want to like have our input. Yeah. And then like walking into the men's basketball game, the next one, he like dapped me up as soon as I walked in. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Pretty cool, man. Yeah, man. No, you guys, I mean, listen, like ever since the very beginning, anytime that I've ever gotten praise or rather praise has come my way, very much like I let you guys fully know about it, as you guys should, right immediately on Slack as soon as it's told to me. But you guys are very much like household names. Like I don't know that.
And I don't think I realized that until like way later into like my career here. I was like, wait a minute, these people actually like know who I am. I was
right.
Like,
There's a grad student that works in our office, and I was just talking about graphics. I was like, yeah, like we have this queued up. Hopefully it happens this weekend. And she goes, oh, was that Zach or was that Aidan?
Who said that? Who said that?
Tate Jordan. Yeah. And she was like, I was like, yo, you know their names? She was like, I mean, yeah, they're always tagged. I was like, well, good. And then the other side of it, of Kavika reaching straight out to you, I'm very happy to hear that. One, obviously, because it's like a cool connection to make. Obviously felt comfortable enough, but then also was smart enough to just go straight to the source. At the same time, one less email in my inbox. So thank you for that. I think maybe one of our last couple points here before we begin to wrap a little bit, Aidan, I wanted to ask you about really just the broadcasting element. You've taken that on with color commentary. Obviously, correct me if I'm wrong momentarily, but like you straight up went to Kai and was like, yo, like I want to try it. And then really just parts of the job that you didn't really know about and how you've grown more comfortable in that role. Yeah,
so I remember I went to one of the first, I think it was the first weekend tournament that women's basketball did. I forget what the name of it is. Yeah, Tip-Off Classic, yeah. And I showed up wanting to do video. I told Kai, I was like, hey, I just want to do some video just to boost my portfolio. I showed up and Kai was like, sorry, we already have like 5 people here, so there's not really room. I was like, that kind of sucks. And I was like, is there anything else I can do for you? Like, since I'm here already? He was like, is there anything you want to do? And I just kind of looked around and I was like, you got anyone for color commentary? And he was like, you want to do it? I was like, yeah, dude, let's do it. Yeah. And so I literally walked upstairs. I met Sean for the first time, like 10 minutes before we went on air.
Did you have notes or like did you know the teams?
No, literally did not prepare at all. Yeah, did notes like while the game was going, and I think I like kind of knew what I was doing just because like you watch sports and you hear these guys talk all the time, and some of the stuff is like the most cliche thing ever. But it's funny like that weekend when I was doing it, and I didn't have anything else to say. I was saying those cliche things that you always hear them say, but. I think that's been super fun. Just going back to the being invested part that I was talking about. I know everyone on men's and women's basketball, and I don't even look at the rosters or the notes. Like I look at them and I know who they are, and it makes it so much easier just to call the games. But Sean's great. Sean's killer play-by-play guy. I think we get along great, and our chemistry on the broadcast is really great as well. And I think. First couple games I called, not good. I'd say the same thing with design, right? It's tough, but it's just like easing into it. And, a couple games ago, Kai was giving me notes just on things that, Sean and I can get better at. And it's like an always be improving thing. And I think literally that first game that we had after the notes, that was probably one of our best games that we've ever called together. And so it's just something that we keep building on, and every game we're trying to get better. And we talked about, this weekend women's basketball can get like an outright UAA. And I told Sean, I was like, yo, we're meeting up this week before the game, and we're going over the notes because we're going to have people tuning in. Like, this is probably the biggest game in the UAA right now. Yeah. And so it's fun. I love it a lot. I grew up listening to Kirk Herbstreit. I was like, I want to be Kirk Herbstreit so bad. And so I'm just channeling my inner Kirk Herbstreit when I go on the broadcast. But.
We talk about Gary, Keith, and Ron in New York. That's who we talk about, just so you know. But
I'm more of a Mike Breen kid. I was like way too young to have any of these legends, man.
Yeah. Gary, Keith, and Ron is the Mets broadcast right now.
I don't watch enough Mets baseball to tell you that.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm more of a basketball person. I do like get my Mets updates on Twitter, but like I've probably watched a total of like 15 Mets games in the past 3 years. Unfortunately,
just blue and orange spillover is all you get over there. We did begin to speak about this at the beginning. I suppose I'll at least formally pose the prompt of just career aspirations, really just, in the next couple of years to come for you both. What might those be, and if there's any specific, inspiration to those aspirations for each of you.
I've kind of laid out a blueprint in my head, but I feel like people do lay out blueprints and never stick to them. So it's a blueprint for now. We'll see where it takes me. But I want to like get my foot in the door with like a pro team as a graphic designer, and then eventually like work my way up the ladder to like a creative direction role or some sort of like marketing lead role. But it's good to have like the niche skill to get you into the building, and then you can work your way up. And I don't want to be too picky, but like the Knicks have been my life ever since I like picked up a basketball. And like if I could get to work for the Knicks, that would be like my dream come true. Yeah. But I can't be too picky. Pro team would be great.
I mentioned earlier it's interview season, so I've been interviewing for a bunch of jobs that I've been applying for. The goal is to work for either a pro team, pretty much any sport really, or a college athletic department. And I've been working on some of those. And I don't know how long I'm going to be there, but I just know that I want to continue working in sports. It's so great, and I always say this in interviews: it's more than sports, and there's just a sense of community and a sense of like social impact that it makes that you can't find anywhere else. And so, I can't imagine myself working in any other industry just because sports is so much different from everything else.
Yeah, I feel the same way, man. I feel the same way. I always knew, like, even down to when I was a freshman in college and I was broke, and I was like, bro, I just need a job. I was like, all right, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to sit at the desk at, a registrar? Am I going to sit at a cubicle in the library? I was like, but, like, I really mess with sport. Like, I really want to work at sport. So I hit up, just like how you guys did, email the athletic department, whoever that contact was, ended up working out that way. But, like, Zach, there was just one part that I really wanted to just latch onto that you just mentioned about just having that, like, niche skill just to, like, get you through. Like, that was me with, like, doing stats, recaps, updating the schedule on the website. Like, you don't find that many undergrads that are doing the whole communication stuff in athletics. So, yeah, like, that opened up, like, a million doors for me just because of not only how transferable the skills are and how big the network is, but really just the exposure to sport overall. There's no simulating that. Andrew, you got anything else for our guys?
No, just thank you for your time.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for all the hard work all the time, obviously.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I don't know if we say it enough, but I'm honestly, how about you, Kyle? I'm really excited that some people in the community that listen to this will get to hear a little bit of these guys' voices and kind of see where they're coming from.
Yeah, this is the real silence behind the violence.
The silence behind the silence.
It's a silence for real. Yeah, I thought it was important. I thought it was important to not only have more student staff, more staff in general on, but also just you guys in particular, right? You guys have been the absolute backbone to a lot of what we've been doing, and I know that there's so much more ahead because we still got a few more seasons ahead of us. So
got a whole year ahead of myself.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. All right, episode 12. I believe. Let me check my notes. Yeah, episode 12, Silence Behind the Violence podcast. New episode every Monday. I gotta make sure to say that more often because sometimes I don't get to put a clip up that week. Every Monday. We haven't missed one for 12 weeks. It's a solid 3 months.
3 whole months.
Yeah, man. Out here. Takes 3 months to develop a habit is what they say. I don't know who they are. That's what they say.
They're right.
So keep it locked to go. NYUathletics.com at NYU Athletics across the board on socials. Zach, Aidan, thank you guys for coming through.
Thank you.
Thank you.